Hi BookTube and welcome to a new video. I've called this the sad haul video, and it's not sad because I've got a load of sad books by a load of loser writers. It's sad because of where they've come from. So my office moved back in late March, and the nearest tube station is Old Street, and inside the tube station sort of subway part is a bookshop called Camden Books, which is an independent bookshop. This was fantastic for me, and very early on in my commuting in the morning I realised that I was going to finish my book about halfway through my journey on the way back, and so I thought, right, well, I need a book to replace it because I haven't brought a second one with me. So on the way home, on the walk back to the station, Old Street, I popped into the bookshop, bought something which turned out to be Ned Bowman's The Teleportation Accident, finished the first book, bang, without blinking, straight into the second one. So I thought, oh, this is a fantastic resource. And I bought a few books from there, one at a time. I haven't sort of gone binge shopping. And yesterday I saw a tweet saying it was closing down, which, you know, I couldn't believe. I just discovered this place and its convenience was incredible. I could go at lunchtime. It's closing down due to competition from Amazon and London business rates, and they were holding a closing down sale. They're going to close in July unless they run out of books before then, and 23% off all books. So I went in today at lunchtime and sort of, apart from feeling sad, I felt a bit guilty really, because it's a bit like sort of you know, a vulture sort of going in on the remains of a carcass. But anyway, you know, I bought 7 books. I can't even say you're supporting your local bookshop because it's too late. So it's a dreadful thing really, and you know, I didn't really get any pleasure at all from sort of, you know, binge book buy. I can't remember the last time I went into a bookshop and bought 7 books. I normally, as I say, buy 1 or 2 at a time. So that's why it's a sad book haul. I'm mainly sort of, it was a mixture of sort of plugging holes in you know, by writers that I knew, but I didn't have that particular book. But also you're slightly random because unlike a normal bookshop, stuff had already gone, and as books go in a closing down, so they're not being replaced. So there were some obvious titles there that, you know, I thought I could get, but they weren't. You know, they'd gone. Neil Stevenson, I haven't sort of really kept up with his career. I've read Cryptonomicon and Snow Crash, and that sort of historical one set in sort of 18th century America. I'm sort of part way through and sort of gave up because it was a straight historical novel. And after that, I never sort of really kept up. And I recently did some browsing online as to what he'd been doing, and there were a couple of titles there that I quite fancied, but they weren't in stock. So I'm just going to go through the books that I hauled. So I'm not sad about these books. I'm just sad about the circumstances in which I came by them. So this is Adam Thirlwell, Lurid and Cute, which is possibly the best known Thirlwell novel. I've been looking for a copy of his Kapow, but it's out of print. I have heard that it's being reprinted. I don't know how true that is. So I've held off buying anything else by Adam Thirlwell because Kapow was the one that most appealed to me, and that was the one I've tried to track it down second hand as well and things like that. But, you know, it hasn't happened. This was the only Thirlwell that the bookshop had, so I thought, well, you know, I can at least get a sense of his style. So there's that. This is Flann O'Brien, the Third Policeman. Now, I may well have a copy of this. I was looking for it recently because I do fancy reading it this year. I've had it for ages. I bought a second-hand copy, probably when I was at university, because although I was doing history, I was friends with lots of people doing English as their degree, and they all raved about Flann O'Brien. Including Sam Mendes, who I was at college with, the film director and theatre director. So I bought a second-hand copy years and years ago, and it sort of sat on my shelf. And recently I was looking for it, couldn't find it. So when I saw this day at the bookshop, I thought, I'll stop messing about, just have a new copy. I bet the old one turns up, but it doesn't matter. So I'm looking forward to it. This is supposed to be really, really funny. What's this? Lullaby by Leila Slimani. So Leila Slimani is a relatively new writer from France, highly sort of talked about in BookTube over the last year, 18 months. She was nominated for the shortlist. Was it the Women's Prize? No, she was definitely nominated for one or a couple of prizes. I'd sort of made a note, but hadn't sort of felt it was, an urgent read. Anyway, so I saw this, thought, no, I'm gonna pick it up, give her a try. And then when I went to the counter, they had her more recent book, which I can't remember, is it called Adele or something? They had signed copies. And by then I sort of felt, well, I don't want to buy both of them because I don't know if I'm going to like her. I should have swapped this out for Adele, but anyway, I didn't, and I've ended up with this one, which I take it is not signed. No. Well, what are you going to do? Okay, Nicholson Baker, Travelling Sprinkler. Now, I've read pretty much... One says one's read nearly everything by Nicholson Baker, but actually he's a prolific writer, so that's probably not true. I have read a lot of Nicholson Baker books. I hadn't heard of this one. I'm going to see when it was first published. 2013. He's an interesting writer because his first books are very, very sort of idiosyncratic. They're sort of absolute micro detail of how things work and everyday things, these sort of long riffs about, something he spotted in the street or whatever. And I really liked them. And then he sort of moved away from that. And he wrote sort of kind of slightly kinky sexual fantasy books like Vox and The Fermata, which were quite funny as well. And I liked them, both of them as well. He was also writing non-fiction, and I haven't read his non-fiction. And then he wrote a book when Bush was elected, called Moving Targets, something like that, where the whole book is a discussion between two men. One of them is fantasizing about assassinating President Bush, or is it a fantasy? Is it, he's just talking, he's just trying to get his courage up to do it by talking it out with the other guy, and it's terrible. It's a really bad book. There was that point I stopped reading Nicholson Baker. But give him another try, see where he's at as of 6 years ago. Angelica's Grotto, Russell Hoban. So I've only ever read one, Russell Hoban. It's one that was heavily involved with quantum physics. Can't remember what it's called now. And I was, I could see the ideas, I could see the sort of craft, but I was unconvinced by it. But this sounds something completely... Oh, he's basically a science fiction writer. But this sounded something very different. So, Angelica's Grotto is a pornographic website into which 72-year-old art historian Harold Klein wanders one evening. Klein, a walking catalogue of infirmities, known to medical consultants as he who declines to hop the twig, may not be up to much physically, but there's a lot of sex going on in his head. You're a tiger from the neck up, Professor, says Melissa, the brains behind the website, when at last Klein faces the object of his desire. So, I don't know, I mean, it just sounded very interesting to me, really. So, and, as I can recognise he's an ideas guy, which I always, respond to well, and I thought, that potentially this is an interesting book. Journey into the End of the Night by Celine. So, I mentioned in my Would You Buy books by authors who you disapproved of their private life or their values or views, and I said no, I wouldn't, and I'll post the link to that video. But in the discussion I said, despite Celine being a virulent anti-Semite during the Second World War and sort of collaborated with the Nazis, to the point where he's actually writing anti-Semitic tracts that some of the Nazis said were too extreme. I said that wouldn't stop me reading Celine, but I haven't read him, and that's probably sort of always lurked at the back of my mind as to why I haven't sort of moved to pick one of his books up. Mitchell Axler, viewing one of my bookshelves videos, noticed that I hadn't got any Celine, and I said, well, I will read him one day, but as yet I haven't. Well, Mitchell, I've picked one up, and this is supposed to be his most famous or most popular or whatever book. And he is an I've not read him, but he does sound an interesting writer because he sort of prefigures, postmodernism to some extent, as far as I can understand. But I'll let you know how I get on with that. Now, whether I get to this year or not, I don't know. There is something definitely, keeping me at one step of remove of actually sort of, plunging into Celine. And finally, Libra by Don DeLillo, the only Don DeLillo book I've never read. I'm an absolute DeLillo fan. I don't know why I've never really got around to reading this. I'd always assumed this was very similar to Underworld, which is by DeLillo, all about sort of the Kennedy assassination, lots of whispers of conspiracy theories. Is it? Yeah, you see, this is also Don DeLillo's Extraordinary Libra is a brilliant reimagining of the events and people surrounding the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, concentrating on the lives of Lee Harvey Oswald, some rogue former spooks unhappy with Kennedy's presidency, and Nicholas Branch, a CIA archivist. Trying to make sense of or draw inference from the massive information after the assassination, Libra presents an unapologetically provocative picture of America in the second half of the last century. Well, that does sound like very like Underworld, but I guess I read Underworld so long ago now that it's probably safe for me to read this without sort of making comparisons across. So, you know, I hope it is sufficiently different to Underworld. I'll be a bit disappointed if my original prejudice about, you know, writing the same book again turns out to be true. But I'm now a completist because I now have all of those works. So there you have it. As the camera just fell down. So there you have it. This has been a rather sad book haul. Not sad books, but sad circumstances, and I'm just really, really sorry. It was interesting in that tweet, a second independent bookshop, Wenlock Books, was also announced that it is closing down for the same reasons, business rates and Amazon, and you know, it behoves all of us book buyers, book lovers, to support our local bookshops and to keep them alive in the face of these sort of, you know, tax dodging, cheating, mega global corporations. And I admit, you know, I use Amazon a lot, as you've seen from my haul video, you know, my unboxing videos. Part of the reason for that is because I can't get these books. A lot of them are only available in America or out of print, so I get them second hand from Marketplace. So, for example, my next read is called Sonic Flux, and it's about sound. It's non-fiction. And that comes from the University of Chicago, and I'm pretty sure it's really hard to get hold of that through regular bookshops in the UK. So, you know, I do hold my hand up. I'm probably lazy and don't support bookshops enough. So, you know, I have to work harder on that as well. Okay, so till next time, thanks very much.